Energy about the progress of the municipal aggregation program. So, Patrick, take it away.
All right. Thank you very much. So my name is Patrick Roach. I'm with Good Energy. We are the consulting company working with the town to help launch the community electricity aggregation program. So what I'm going to do tonight is go through some slides that will sort of bring you up to speed on what's happened with that program, where we're headed, where we're moving towards launch, and also just a little bit of background, since it's been a while since anyone's thought about this, reminding you just what the program is, how it works, and happy to take any questions about that. So to get started, just a little bit of background on us. So we have been managing aggregation programs, particularly in Massachusetts, but in some other markets, for over 10 years. We are working with a group of communities in Rhode Island, and so those are on the slide there. Newport and Narragansett are just sort of kind of beginning their process, whereas the other communities, Central Falls, Providence, Barrington, Portsmouth, and South Kingstown, are sort of on the same timeline. These communities are really, you guys are set to be the first to implement this in the state, since the state changed the law a few years ago to allow this to go forward. So for some background on community electricity aggregation, the idea here is that in Rhode Island, on your bill from National Grid, you've got a supply portion and a delivery portion. The delivery is the wires and the poles, and National Grid will always handle that. But the supply, you can choose today to go out and use whatever supplier you want, and National Grid will deliver that. And for most large businesses, particularly the town's accounts as well, they've already gone out and chosen a supplier. But most residents and small businesses haven't done that. Largely that's because our usage is relatively small compared to these big users, and so the deals that are out there aren't all that great. You're sort of you don't really get to dictate the terms of the contract as a residential customer. So one of the appealing things about community electricity aggregation is we're getting to effectively bundle the residential and business customers together who haven't made their choice of a supplier yet, and use that buying power to procure competitively electricity, so we can set the terms of the price, how long the term is, and those other kind of terms and conditions that can help make sure we protect consumers. So it's really bringing that local control to your electricity supply. And part of that can also be dictating how much renewable energy is in it and how many different options we have. So, looking at some program milestones, this has been a process that's now going back to 2019. So the program was authorized by the council in 2019, September. And then in the next few months, there was a selection process. Good Energy was brought on board. We started working with the town staff to start developing the plan. There's an aggregation plan. And we ultimately held a public hearing on that plan and got public input on that. And that was in July 2020. And then after that, the plan was approved to be submitted to the Public Utilities Commission. So there's a local approval, and then there's a state level approval. So these were the first plans ever submitted to the Public Utilities Commission. And it took them about a year to May of this year to approve that, which might sound slow, but was actually lightning fast compared to some other states, which was great. They really want to see these programs move forward, and really they're looking forward to them as well. So we got approval from the Public Utilities Commission in May, and that was the last approval we needed. And then we started working with National Grid, because we need to get data from National Grid about about the participants and their load, so that we can put that out to bid. So that took a while. It was the first time they had done it either. So we got that this fall, and we're in the process of selecting an electricity supplier. And we're looking right now, hopefully May of next year would be about when we could expect to launch. And there are 5 communities who each have their plans have all been approved. So you're one of 5 that are sort of moving together and essentially procuring together. So you have your own program. It'll be your own choice and your own contract, but we'll bring the communities together to get extra buying power effectively and look for everyone to sort of make the same consensus decision on a supplier. So you have over 100,000 accounts, which is really, that's some substantial size, and there's a lot of supplier interest in that. And this, I won't go into all the detail here, but one of the things we've been doing is we've been both moving individual municipalities' plans forward, but then also there's a bunch of behind-the-scenes work we've been doing to create sort of the environment for aggregation. So there are a few things we needed to do with the Public Utilities Commission to pass some policies. So even though the law existed, there were some policies that we wanted to see in effect that really make these programs much more effective. Purchase of receivables is one, and that essentially is important to give suppliers more certainty over how they get paid, and that ultimately means less risk for them and lower prices. It also helps us make sure we can continue to offer budget billing, which is really important, and some of the low-income protections there won't be any change with that. So purchase of receivables we got that passed. And then we've worked with the Public Utilities Commission to work on a number of other things in terms of the tariff National Grid had to file, how we're going to disclose the energy sources to customers, and also the annual reporting requirements. So there's just a few things that have gone on in the background. And I think it's great. I just want to say being sort of in the lead pack here, because you really paved the way for other communities. Although your review at the PUC took a year, they now feel comfortable with the process and they understand it. And so Portsmouth, actually, they submitted, and they submitted just after your plan was approved, and it took them about 2 months to go through. So I think you've helped pave the way for others, which is great. So looking at sort of the launch timeline, where we're going from here, right now we are doing a request for proposals for the suppliers. And in early December, we're going to be getting together with your staff and the staff of the other communities who are part of this to review those results. And then what we'll be doing is with your staff coming back before you to make a recommendation about who to move forward with. So right now that could be it could be in December. We'll see how the timing goes. It may be a little bit later, but we'll be coming back before you with a recommendation. And the idea there would be that then we'd be able to move ahead with a supplier. And when we have that, we'll have our launch date identified. So right now we're aiming for May. And the last couple slides I'll talk about are before launch, there's a big public education and outreach process. So we want to make sure that the community is aware that this is happening, and particularly that everyone's aware of their rights and their options. So one of the things I want to remind the council of is that this is an opt-out program. So everyone who has not made a choice of electricity supplier, when the program starts, they will get a letter that says you are eligible for automatic enrollment in this. And they will be given multiple ways that they want to opt out and not participate. And that letter comes at least 30 days before the program starts. So you've got at least 30 days to think about it, decide what you want to do. It comes with a postage-paid envelope. You can just sign it, put it back in the mail if you don't want to be in. There's a phone number and a website too. You can do it through either way. And then once the program does start, people can still leave at any time. And just the next billing cycle, they'll be out. There's no penalties, no termination fees, anything like that. So it's always voluntary participation. And our goal as part of that launch is to try to do as much as we can to make the community aware of it and let people know their options before it even starts. So I have just a sample bill up here. If someone was looking, if they were wondering, am I eligible for automatic enrollment? You'd look at your National Grid bill, you go down to the supply services section, And it's hard to see there, but it says supplier, and then for most people, it probably says National Grid. That would mean that you are eligible for automatic enrollment. If you're one of the people who's chosen another supplier already, you're always welcome to join the program, but you won't be automatically enrolled, so you'll be staying with that unless you actively choose to come into the program. And as I mentioned, the kind of key thing that everyone will get when we get to launch, at least 30 days before the launch, is this letter that states all the terms and all the prices, the renewable energy levels, and lets them opt out. Before that, we send a postcard a couple days before, and the idea there is before we give you something that's kind of dense and has a lot of information on it, we're just going to send a simple postcard that's saying, hey, town of South Kingstown has a program, it's an electricity program, there's more detail coming, and we also advertise when we would be having a community meeting. So people, if you want to learn more about it, right off the bat. And then we'll do press releases, we'll do social media things, we'll create flyers, and we'll work with the town staff to kind of figure out all the different ways to connect with the community. And part of our role is covering the cost of any materials or any things that need to be created as part of that. So yeah, that's really, I think, where I wanted to leave off there. So I think we're at an exciting time. There's been a lot of work for a couple of years building up to this. We're sort of in this supplier selection, and we're really excited to work with your staff and then come back with a recommendation to you fairly soon.
Thank you. Questions for Patrick? We have a couple minutes.
Just to refresh my memory, is this just residential, or is this all users of National Grid who have not already chosen a supplier?
It's all. We probably would expect very few really large industrial accounts, and then a number of small business accounts.
And when someone chooses to opt out, it is seamless, correct? If I'm remembering correctly, they will just automatically revert back to National Grid.
Exactly, it's seamless. And if they opt out before the program starts, there's never any difference.
Thank you.
So if someone were to ask me why I should stay with you're choosing a supplier, you're vetting out between 5, you'll give us one, say it's ABC Energy, whatever. A person, a family or resident or whatever would be able to, the selling point would be if you choose ABC, your bill is going to be lower. Is that the 30-second elevator pitch? You can save money if you switch?
Yes, I would just add to that what we'll be looking to do. So the program will have, the way your plan is written, there are 4 different electricity choices. Mm-hmm. But one of those is the standard. We call it the standard. That's the one that you would be automatically enrolled into if you did nothing. And the goal for the standard is to be cheaper than National Grid, as well as being a little cleaner, a little greener. So we're looking to, essentially, we have the advantage, or the town has the advantage of choosing when to go to bid and for how long. And that's an advantage that National Grid doesn't have. They have a very prescribed procurement schedule. So we have an advantage that we can use to get better pricing. So we're looking for that standard product to get better pricing and to make it a little bit greener. So those would be the two benefits. I guess there's a third, which is it may be a price that's stable for longer. Usually National Grid's prices are just stable for 6 months. They change every 6 months. So we can also go longer than that.
And if you would just discuss the third benefit for people who are environmentally minded, there's other options where it's even greener, might be more expensive.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, so the idea with most people tend to stay in that standard product. So by having a little bit more renewable energy, actually it still stays affordable, but across the whole town it adds up to a pretty big impact. But then the program also has optional 50% and 100% renewable energy options for those people who are willing to pay a little bit more and want to have a bigger impact. The program also has a basic option, which is just the state's minimum renewable energy levels. That might be for someone who says, I want the absolute bare minimum price in the program.
questions? One last question for me. I heard that National Grid is selling its operations. Does that have any impact on the program at all?
So right now, we don't expect that to have any impact. One of the great things that we did all this work, getting the first plans approved, getting National Grid's tariff up and running, getting purchase of receivables passed, all before this acquisition takes place. So that means that if it does, that's still sort of a question, that will have, they have to take on everything that is currently Narragansett Electric, which National Grid's company. So, so we don't anticipate any issues with that.
All right. Any final questions? Well, thank you very much and giving us the update. It's been a little while, so it's good to have the refresher.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right. Then let's move on to our interviews next. We have a couple for the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, folks who would like to be reappointed. I saw David Hamill. If you would like to come up to the podium.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
So you've been on the BPAC for a little while. Tell us about your experience, why you want to keep doing it.
Okay. So I am one of the original members. When I saw the advertisement for the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, I said, this is just what's needed. I was tired of screaming at cars driving by and getting cut off, and instead of complaining, I wanted to do something about it. So I applied and am a committed member. Let's see. I would like to say a couple of things about the process. Is that okay? And do I have a couple of minutes then?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
try to
Thanks.
be.
Yeah. All right. So the original charge was written brilliantly. Okay. It makes sense. Who doesn't want to see more bicycle people and more pedestrians? The dilemma was it was kind of an overshoot, and the overshoot was that we live. This will come as a surprise to you in a auto-centric town. Okay, there's the 32,000 residents. People drive fast. What is it, like 10,000 households? Everyone must have 5 or 6 cars, and because I'm making fun there, but it was this. It was kind of an interesting sell. So everyone can understand the benefits of riding bikes and walking. Okay? And having a community that has a safe place to do that. We all know that the determinant for how many people ride bikes and how many people walk is that they feel safe. That's the primary thing. So we are blessed with an incredible community. Beautiful surroundings. We have a great bike paths. We have 60 miles of roads, and a lot of it is crisscrossed with state highways. People like to drive fast. There is an attitude that's hard to overcome. This attitude is the town. I think everyone may have it at some point. Okay, so what happened with the BPAC is when we were developing the master plan, we were surprised that we were the ones that had to do all the analysis and all the writing, and that's how it happened. So the BPAC members did all the analysis and all the writing. And if it wasn't for Jim Bogle and his company putting everything together in a neat package, it still probably would have been out there. And this was not, I think that it's not, I'm not pointing the finger at anyone in the town. We went from the planning department to a couple of other places for staff support. All good, but no one knew that who was supposed to be writing the plan and who was supposed to be doing the analysis and who was supposed to be writing the plan. So there are three main pieces, or three primary objectives for the bicycle pedestrian master plan. And this also, there's a subgroup with the bicycle pedestrian improvement plan, which identifies 181 different places that we hope that the town would address. We know that everything was complicated with COVID. We know that there are money issues. We know that there are staff issues. So everything takes time. And we are working with government, and I know you all know what the issues are there. And it's probably how it should be in a lot of senses. Okay. So the first one was engaging the community. The second is the green and complete streets, and the third is the South County coastal bike route. So for engaging the community, we are still casting about on how to do that. If you're a community person and you have an issue that you need to address, let's say that people are driving down your street very fast, or you want your child to have a safe way to walk to school, there are a couple of places that you would call, and by and large, it becomes really difficult for those places that you call, let's say the Department of Public Works or the police department. They have a tough time of getting the resources to address this. So when we were asking for that information, it was also tough for them to provide that for us. So that's the first thing as far as engaging the community is there needs to be a way for a body to understand what the issues are for the community. And I can assure you that if you have a vehicle for that where a community member can go and discuss issues of safety for any family member around bicycle and pedestrian, that you'll have more people come out and express themselves. And I think that's important for the community involvement. It also is a way of getting at having people not driving their cars so much. The second piece is the green and complete streets. The Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee submitted a draft to the staff at the last meeting in October. It's a draft that strangely looks a lot like the Newport green and complete streets, and as it should. And what I would suggest for the town council is that that be brought up soon. That is a vehicle for changing the dynamics of how the town looks at how streets are improved, how streets are planned for. The third piece, and it's funny, I had a pile of notes here, and I'm going to I know you're all looking at your watches probably, but the third piece is the South County coastal bike route. This was something that what we envisioned was a bike route that goes from Westerly to North Kingstown, and where we have a piece sort of ready to go, and the piece ready to go is we had worked with Faith Labossiere, who is the chair of the Recreation Commission in Charleston. Charleston has a piece of the bike route pretty much done from Ninigret Park that stops at the South Kingstown line on Matunic Schoolhouse Road. And so what we would like to do is have that section from Matunic Schoolhouse Road to Matunic Beach Road as a designated bike route. What happens is when we're discussing this, what comes up, there's an inertia that needs to be overcome. And we can't seem to break the inertia. And the inertia is there's no money, there could be legal issues, there's always reasons for stalling the plan. And all good reasons. If I would probably be doing the same thing, you need to protect the town. But other towns have done this without a problem.
David, let me just stop you there.
Yeah.
Because we're really just trying to do interviews to see if we appoint you to the
I just
committee.
thought it said, well, it's funny.
It's helpful for us to hear what is going on in the committee.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, all right. Well, I would just ask that you will be seeing from the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee the Green and Complete Streets draft, which you folks can help with get the staff to take a look at, and also a communique about the South County Coastal Bike Route. Okay, so I guess I'm interested in
I think we can all get
Okay.
that sense. Thank you.
All right.
We appreciate all the work that you and the other committee members have put into it. And those are some exciting projects that we look forward to hearing more about. And one of the things like that EDC did recently is they held like a community forum, I think, down at the CTC.
Right.
Maybe something the BPAC could do.
Right.
Like
We
for that
were
public
stymied by one other thing. The infrastructure bill has $1.5 billion dedicated towards bicycle pedestrian issues. And also that legislation, assuming it gets through the Senate, has a requirement that 10 to 15% of the state's highway money be dedicated towards alternative transportation. So this, having the Green and Complete Streets in position lines up the town much more competitively. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll
Thank
say-
you. Any questions
Oh.
for David while he's still here?
Oh, come on, ask a
All right.
question. I was after that.
You really love this job. You really love your role.
Actually, I was going to start off by saying I found it, worth doing, but frustrating. And there's a whole. I've worked in the public sector for 30 years, and I understand how things can happen. But we are hoping for the town council, when things come before you about this, to take a look and make it happen. Okay, thanks.
And that does bring us to James Vogel.
Hello, thank you for having me here.
So similar question. You've been on the committee for a little while now.
Yes.
You've enjoyed it, obviously. You want to be reappointed. Tell us what you look forward to in another.
So I'm probably the newest member, I think, of the ones that are on there right now. So I wasn't an original member. I came in, 6 months or a year later. I think Dave covered a lot of things in his preamble there, but I think the people in the committee are committed to these causes. So, and I think pedestrians, cycling, and really trying to help our community grow and see somehow to look for intermodal transportation is key, especially with our two, I think, big assets of the university and the beach. And how do we link this to get cars off the road? We all know traffic goes up during the season, whether it's school season or whether it's the summer. And then Dave alluded to what we have with this, I'm going to say, constant challenge of speeding. We have these straight roads in this town that go pretty much straight, and they kind of invite you to go maybe above the speed limit. So that's just an example of how we have to manage that or how we have to do that. I think for me, the role that we can give you, and I think that's what I'd like to propose here, is you need an advocate to kind of cover these types of things for when the complaints do come to staff or whatever, how we can help lump them together. And that's what we've done in the plan. So we've balanced things from the actual master plan, thinking about complete streets, and those are, more strategic ways to look at it, to the improvement plan where it's about this issue on this street at this crossroad where we could do something a little better or something along those lines. So I think for me, it's how to help the town really go that way. And Dave expressed a little bit, and the group in general has had some frustrations. We need help from you to really help us know what matters to you and how we can get these things to you a little better. Whether it's utilizing the funds that are coming, great, or helping for the next budget cycle and how we can maybe get some more things earmarked for this.
Questions for James? All right, thank you. We will let you guys know shortly.
Okay, thank you.
And next, for the Route 138 Reconstruction Project Area Committee, Peter Maynard. Is Peter here? All right, perhaps he will come in the next few minutes. If not, either way, let's take a look at the agenda tonight.
Good evening, council members. We have another guest with us this evening who is our animal control officer, Tara Secator, and I was hoping that Ms. Secator could come up and introduce herself briefly to the council to give you an overview of what her role is and what her training has been since we have been having the discussion on the ordinance for animal control, if that's okay with the council.
Yeah, I think there's probably time for that. It's not a lengthy agenda. So.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to introduce Tara Secator as our ACO. She's never spoken in front of the council before, so I'm kind of walking her through these steps. And I basically, just information, if you guys have any questions, I thought it'd be a great idea for her to come in and talk about her training and the ordinance that has been proposed that we worked on.
Hello, how are you guys? It's nice to finally meet you all. So I have been an animal control officer just part-time for 6 years. I just became full-time about a month and a half, 2 months ago. So this issue in particular I've been dealing with for quite some time. It's actually been more of an issue the last, I would say, a year. Over COVID, I feel like everyone went out and they got farm animals, and it's becoming more and more of a disregard to private people's, people's public property, private property, and it's just something that I feel like the residents need, because I get the phone calls and I have to tell them there's nothing I can do about it, and they get upset, and I would too. It's my property. I don't want someone's goats or cows or horses destroying it, and even chickens. They destroy people's property, and so we discussed this, and I know that Mr. Orsillo has gone over that, and Joel and I both met and drafted this. He drafted this, and we put a little bit of different things in there too, but just something that we can help the community out with, because it is very frustrating on my end too to be like, I can't help you, So in order to be an animal control officer, you have to go through a training. One of the trainings is called NACA, National Animal Care and Control. They do teach us how to, different, with the animals, we go to different calls, cows, chickens, whatever farm life, what they need to be fed, their appropriate body weight, their different body languages as well. So I'm familiar with that. A lot of my stuff is hands-on. 2 years ago, I couldn't catch a chicken for the life of me. Now I'm becoming a pro at it. So it's like a lot of it's hands-on. When it comes to the larger farm animals, they can be intimidating. I do go to monthly animal control officer meetings put on by the SPCA. It's trainings, basically. And I had gone to the SPCA and I had said, the next training comes springtime. We all agreed we need to work on large animal control and care, because all the animal control officers, they don't deal with this. And now it's becoming an issue. And public safety is the number one issue on my end, too. So trying to safely get the animals out of the roadway, stuff like that. So this ordinance will help with not only private property, but public as well. So.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for Carol? All right. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you guys,
Don't be a
too.
stranger.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Okay, just running through the agenda quickly. Item 7, we have a couple of public hearings. We have one on a renewal liquor license for Audrey's Coffee House. Per the town clerk's memorandum, this particular business is cleared for approval, providing the council chooses to do that. We also have a public hearing for, this has been carried over from the last meeting, for Pump House Music Works for a Class T legitimate theater liquor license. And I do have Police Chief Ewing Chow here to speak to any recent calls that may have come in on noise complaints. And we also have a letter from the owner who has, that was in your packets, who has addressed some of the questions that have come up. So that's also on for a public hearing. We have a number of communications. Communication item A from Councilwoman Rose. This is in regards to the stormwater issue on Dam Street, and there was also a corresponding memorandum from the Public Services Director with some background information on that, and John is also here if the council has any questions in that regard. Item F is an email from Mr. Pignataro regarding property tax exemptions for 100% disabled veterans, which the council can recommend how you want to proceed on that. And item H is related to an email from Mr. O'Neill with requests for some school district information, which was also provided to the council. That is the extent of communications, unless there are any questions on any of the consent agenda items.
So I don't have the letter from the Pump House, or it came in something that I can't find it quickly. Say that again. Is the email from you or from Colleen? It's not too much trouble because I'm going to spend minutes looking for it otherwise.
Okay. Does anyone else need a copy?
It's linked here?
Yeah, that's right.
There should be a link.
There you go. Thank you.
We have the town solicitor will give an update on the town manager's search. You have a couple of appointments. We have the resolution, a citation congratulating Richard Parker for his 100th birthday. And then we also have under new business item B, the resolution to amend the town's liquor license rules and regulations. We have one business, Tilly's, that is out of business right now, and so there is a Class B liquor license that will be recommended for the council to remove from the number of Class B limited liquor licenses if they so choose. We have an order of notice with regards to the Animal and Fowl Article 1 related to the chicken ordinance. You have a resolution with regard to the manager's search for the profile and challenge document that we have copies for you if you don't have them. And we have a closed executive session on three separate items. And I think that covers the agenda for this evening, unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions on agenda items tonight?
I did. So Jim O'Neill's questions that he got the answers to, I know I saw them, but if a member of the public wanted the answers, where am I sending them to look?
So those can be found under the town manager's report, attachment B. So that's item number 10. And the manager's report dated November 18th. And within that report, it is the last item L.
So would it be possible to link it to the agenda? Because if somebody was interested in the answers, they wouldn't know to go look there.
It's not possible for this evening, for right now, but we could look at doing that. It's just that we would have to take a look at doing that for every item that has a response to it. If the council wanted to do that, that's...
I think for something like that, where people often ask, what's the enrollment of the schools?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, he asked for a lot of information, and it just seems like it will get lost.
Terry, I got a few questions for you. I know the Planning Board and the Economic Development Committee have been working together toward different improvements around the Saugatucket River. I just want to ask of you a status around the different grants they were intending to apply, or we were intending to apply toward as staff to help them with that.
So right now there are two grants. We have the DEM grant that was awarded in 2020 to the Recreation Department in the amount of $80,000. So that is one grant that is going towards that project. More recently, there was an award of technical assistance through it's called the SNEP grant, and that is currently in process with staff and volunteers from the Economic Development Committee and community volunteers going through a training process for stormwater management and how we might identify an area within the park or along the Saugatucket that would be appropriate for design of a stormwater management tool for to better the basic management of stormwater along the river. And there's also a buffer protection component where along the river and or another site in town would be identified. The experts and the professionals that are involved with SNEP would be contributing their expertise to design or recommend a plan for buffer restoration along the river or another location that would ultimately benefit the town. So those are in progress right now. Actually, the first training was held last week, and there are 5 sessions of the SNEP training for staff and members of the Economic Development Committee and the volunteers that are involved in the community. So that is moving along.
So town staff has been fully cooperative with the wants and needs of the Planning Board and Economic Development Committee relative to their improvements or the desired improvements to the Saugatucket River and surrounding areas. Is that right?
That's correct, yes. We've been involved with both, and both, as well as the Recreation Commission, those commissions have been involved with the process, and public meetings have been held to that effect. So we're moving that along.
Great, thank you.
All right. With all that being said, Susan, are we about ready to begin the meeting? All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the South Kingstown Town Council. It is Monday, November 22nd. The time is 7:30. Our first order of business is the pledge to the flag. Please rise and join us. I'd like to now read our land acknowledgement statement. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe, whose land and water we benefit from today. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Council President Collins.
Here.
Council Vice President McEntee.
Here.
Councilwoman Bergner.
Here.
Councilwoman Kelso.
Here.
Councilwoman Rose.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. Item 4 is the approval of minutes of previous meetings.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 4A, B, and C.
Chess Rose, I'll second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Item 5 is the consent agenda.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously as well. That brings us to item 7, public hearings. 7A is a public hearing relative to the renewal of a liquor license for the year beginning December 1st, 2021. Said license is granted contingent upon the issuance of a certificate of good standing from the Rhode Island Division of Taxation, issuance of a certificate of insurance evidencing required liability coverage, compliance with all town ordinances and regulations, the payment of any municipal taxes, user fees, and lease payments in arrears to the town, and the correction of any fire code violations. An application for a license to sell intoxicating beverages under the provision of Title III of the General Laws of 1956 as amended has been filed as follows. Class B victualler ACL, doing business as Audrey's Coffee House and Lounge by Jared Haben, member of South County Commons Way, Wakefield, for the indoor dining room and bar areas as defined in a site plan on file in the town clerk's office, and outdoor service area limited to tables and seating that do not obstruct the pedestrian walkway, further defined in the site plan titled Outdoor Area for Audrey's Coffee House and Lounge. Welcome.
Hi.
And just state your name for the record, please.
I am Erin Lacombe. I am filling in on behalf of Jared Haben.
Welcome. So I know they were here just a couple meetings ago and told us all about it, but please feel free to tell everybody once again.
Yes, so we are obviously applying for our liquor license, seeing as it is a coffee house and lounge. It had simply expired prior to us being able to open. So we are now here again just to simply renew it.
Any questions for the applicant?
Anticipated opening date?
Prior to December 1st.
Any other questions?
After Thanksgiving?
After Thanksgiving. Very soon after.
Very good. If I see no other questions from up here, it is a public hearing, so anybody here who would like to speak on this matter is welcome to come up to the podium and share their opinions or questions. Seeing none, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Do I hear a motion on 7A?
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 7A.
I'll second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously as well. That brings us to item 7B on the agenda. I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion and let Mr. McEntee take over.
7B is a public hearing continued from the November 8th, 2021, relative to the renewal of a liquor license for the year beginning December 1, 2021. Said license is granted contingent upon the issuance of a certificate of good standing from the Rhode Island Division of Taxation, issuance of a certificate of insurance evidencing required liability coverage, compliance with all town ordinances and regulations, the payment of any municipal taxes, user fees, and lease payments in arrears to the town, and the correction of any fire code violations. An application for a license to sell intoxicating beverages under the provision of Title III of the General Laws of 1956 as amended has been filed as follows. Class T Legitimate Theater, Pump House Music Works by Dan Collins, President, 1464 Kingstown Road, Wakefield, for the Presentation Gallery and Hand Tool Workroom in accordance with a special use permit granted December 21, 2016 by the Zoning Board of Review and as further defined in a site plan dated January 4, 2017 on file in the Town Clerk's Office. And we have Dan present. Welcome, Dan.
Good evening, Council.
So if you just want to tell us a little bit of how things have gone. I know when we had met with you, I think it was about a year ago, there were certain noise complaints, and the town took measures to kind of put restrictions on those, and then you also took measures to remedy those. So if you want to just talk a little bit about that.
Correct. There were noise complaints from Tri-Pond Court area and around the neighborhood of the pump house. We've taken some actions like putting up a fence with noise proofing and covering the stage where the performers were with soundproofing and a tent. And that was last year we did that through the year. It did well. We didn't have any complaints for noise. So
will you be continuing to do the outdoor type of activities?
Not through April. I think right now the state of emergency is it's going to extend to April, but I don't know beyond that. I haven't really planned to at this point, but it would be nice if it does get extended to have that option.
And Mike, if the executive order expires and he wanted to continue those activities, he could come to the council and seek that at that time. Is that correct?
That is correct. He would require permission at that point once the executive order is no longer in effect. And as Sue's pointing out too, they would have to go to the zoning board also. So it would be the zoning board first, then the council.
Do any of the council members have questions for Dan Collins while he's here?
So I very honest, I just saw that your letter. I quickly read it, so thank you.
Any questions I can answer?
I appreciate it. I apologize that I didn't see it before. So you're not going to have any outdoor concerts between now and April, but you could, but you're saying
I won't
right.
Until beyond April. It would be too. I think it would be too cold to do outdoor music. And as I understand it, the temporary emergency use permit only is extended to April at this point. So,
right.
Yeah, I wouldn't be doing anything outdoors.
So the liquor license is really for any indoor events for all the musicians who come and play during, and it's the same, the Class T is the same as the courthouse for the arts, so only during intermission and only a little bit before and not.
Can liquor be served? That is correct.
Okay. So that's fine. I guess last meeting, 2 weeks ago, I asked about the landscape plan. So if they were to continue to go outside, other businesses have to put some sort of a plan before the planning board. Is that the same thing that would happen there?
Right. So if the executive order is extended once again, we don't know what's going to happen, that would be the case. If it's not extended, they would have to go and get relief from our boards, and that would have to be all part of it. And then they would have to come back to you and ask for the extension of their liquor license to be outdoors.
Okay.
It would be a two-step process.
Thank you. That's very helpful to me. Thank you.
So, Mike, I got a few questions for you. The fact that they're not considering doing outdoor activities, at least now through April, does that mean we wouldn't consider continuing the restrictions on the license that we have prior
No,
to?
I would continue those I would leave all the restrictions in place as the zoning board had recommended, yes.
Understood.
And Susan will say something here in a second. That correspondence that Councilor Bergner was referring to, that's the November 15th correspondence from Mr. Collins, that should be made part of the record. Or it is part of the record, just so.
Would the councils like to hear from Chief Chow? Okay. All right, would anyone from the public like to speak on this matter? It is a public hearing. And just identify your name and address at the microphone. Understood. Can you just say it in the microphone so all can hear you?
My name is Mark Smith. I live at 42 Dam Street, right directly behind the pump house. Dan's been doing pretty good. He's putting up the fence and everything. He's trying to keep the noise down. He got rid of the sound guy that was making his place sound terrible. So if you guys want to continue with him, the way he's going right now and everything, I have no problem with him. I live right behind him. He's complying with what you're saying. He closes his door when it turns dark when he's playing his music. I can hear my football or whatever movie I'm watching. No problem. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing. And if somebody complains, they're lying to you because I hear him first. That's all I have to say about him. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to speak at this time? All right. Do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, the public hearing's been closed. Do I hear a motion on item 7B?
Motion to
Just
approve. Motion.
There's no opposition to that, just so that there's a vote to close the public hearing.
Is there any opposition to the closing of the public hearing? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Do I hear a motion on 7B?
Motion to approve item 7B.
I'll second.
Just a little conversation on this. Mike, should we continue the restrictions at this point? Do we need to add that to the motion?
The restrictions, I'm just checking to see if they're part of the motion. It is in accordance with the special use permit granted December 21st. The restrictions are in the motion, so if you approve 7B, those restrictions will continue.
Got it. Any opposed to the motion made? All right, 7B passes 4-0.
All right, thank you, Rory. That brings us to communications, item 8. 8A is an email dated November 5th, 2021 from Councilwoman Jessica Rose concerning a stormwater issue on Dam Street. That has been received. Jessica, do you want to?
I'd like to invite Mark to come back up and share some information with us.
Hello again, everyone. About, I'm going to say a year ago. No, before a year ago is when this guy Stu took over the pump house. He was building a little thing in the back which was supposed to be in a storage area. We told him that he was changing the lay of the land. So Mike stopped what he was doing. He made a runoff for the water. That was fine. So the water's building up. It runs off the way it's going for the longest time. Then Dan and these guys come in. They don't like the way the water's running. They build up a berm, which I can't blame them because the water's running down back of place, running out in the street and whatnot. So he builds a berm up. Big old puddle starts up right on the other side of the fence. So I talk about, complain about the puddle. Town comes in, they take this part of where the water is, raise it up, put new asphalt in. When they do that, the water goes right down in front of my house, in front of my driveway, in front of my mailbox, all the way to the next house. Big old puddle. Now, I have a handicapped son. He's legally blind, and he has Down syndrome. I don't want him going out there and slipping up during the wintertime. The thing is nothing but a sheet of ice during the wintertime. I go 3, 4, 5 bags of ice during the winter just to keep it out there, keep him safe so he can get in and out of the car to go back to his job. So make a long story short, They come in, oh, we're going to fix this problem for you. They come and put this drain right in front of my house. Nowhere for the water to run off to, but in my basement. The closest thing to it to run off to is my basement. So it's been over a year. The front of my basement wall, the old cement, my house is over 120 years old. The old cement that was inside of the rocks is pushing down. Now it's on the floor in my basement. I left it there so if somebody wants to come and see it, they can see it. I lose my deep freezer. I lose my furnace. I lose my hot water heater. I lose my wife's crafts and our Christmas stuff. I have nowhere to take a bath. I have nowhere to take a shower. I'm running up and down the stairs 5 times a day just to keep my son clean. He weighs 300 and some pounds. He has downs. I'm almost 64 years old. I can't be running up and downstairs with a bad back. You guys created this problem, and I hope that you're going to fix it. Because I had no problem with that in the last 20 years I lived there until you guys put this drain in front of my house. And I get this great big flood, and now I got to go get another sump pump to pump it out. 3.5 days to drain my basement out. I'm not putting blame on anybody, but you put it there. I hope you're going to fix it, and I hope you fix my basement, my hot water tank, my furnace, and everything else that I lost. I don't want to turn around and look the other way and go to court over this. It's not worth it. You can come and see your mistake. Be man enough to fix it. That's all I have to say. And it is a holiday. I would like to take a bath.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. John, would...
Good evening, John Shark, Public Services Director. So, Dam Street, similar to many other streets in town, has localized areas that are subject to flooding and puddling. I did meet with Mr. Smith back in September. His portion of his property, especially where the driveway is low with respect to the road. So the town did try to abate runoff from the road by putting a berm to keep the water going down Dam Street. There is a slight vertical curve in front of his property where the road is like this. And when we met with Mr. Smith, because we have no localized drainage system elsewhere in the vicinity, we offered to put a dry well in, and that's what we did. There's no outlet for that dry well. That dry well serves to infiltrate stormwater for small rain events into the ground. However, large rain events, which used to be anomalies, but now they're more prevalent, it can't handle that capacity. So we tried where we could to mitigate that. We can remove that dry well, but we did that when we met with Mr. Smith and thought that would be something to help him. But without that dry well there, during rain events, the water is going to pond in the road because we have no other drainage, formalized drainage in the area. I'm a little concerned that, and I don't know if this is a recent event with his Fieldstone Foundation, he is in very close proximity to Rocky Brook Reservoir. He may be under the influence of the hydraulic grade line from the reservoir, but I don't know that for a fact.
I've lived there for almost 20 years. Never had a problem there. Never had a problem there. Even when we had the big water in 2010. Never had a problem down my basement.
Mark.
With that thing in front of my house. That's when my problem started.
And we can remove that. I remember seeing you. We can remove that tomorrow. We were trying to put.
How's that going to solve the problem? How's that going to solve the problem? How do I get a hot water tank?
Mark, if I can just, I know, we just need to have the.
Try to make excuses. Fix the thing.
So I guess a question, Deb, do you have a question?
So I don't really understand a lot about water drains or whatever, but it sounds like to me that you put this, what did you say, dry wall?
It's a dry well.
Dry wall.
It doesn't have connectivity with piping elsewhere. It's just an infiltration dry well.
Okay. So in a regular rainstorm, it's probably okay, but we had that big rainstorm. I don't know, I feel like it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was tons of rain.
In October.
Okay, so that's when it sounds like it flooded into his home?
So that dry well only can infiltrate so much surface water. And then when that capacity is exceeded, then it flows as it always flows, or ponds or puddles in the area.
I kind of imagine it like a dry sponge, and all the water comes in, it can only hold so much, and then...
It only infiltrates so much.
Okay.
Yep.
So are there any other options? So you could take it out, because it doesn't sound like they want it there, but if they do, they could have it, but you could take it out. But what are our other options?
I think probably the best option, and it's not in the capital budget, would be at some point we need to reconstruct Dam Street.
Reconstruct what?
Reconstruct it and repave it. Because if you drive Dam Street again, similar to other roads in town, it undulates and it's not an even, uniform surface. Now, whether we can regrade when we repave the road, when that does happen, and send the water farther to the south without adversely impacting other down gradient property. So we're very careful when we do any work in a road not to redirect flow from one problem where it's been historic to another problem that hasn't had it. We have to be very careful not to do that.
Is it allowable to redirect it to the other side of the street? I know there's no houses on the other side of the street. There is the Rocky Reservoir.
Again, we call it super elevating the road. We can elevate, rather than putting a crown in the road, we super elevate Mr. Smith's side and have the water sheet flow to the other side. Now, we'd have to check with Rydam to make sure we're not increasing flow to Rocky Brook Reservoir, and we probably would have to put some stormwater treatment BMPs in as well. So again, that would be, a much larger project that would compete in the capital project for other road improvement program projects. And it can be done.
Any other questions for John while he's up here?
I don't have a question
Sure.
for you, but so it sounds to me like they don't have hot water or heat. Like it's November 22nd. So not that it's your problem to solve, but it's a problem to solve that there's someone who lives in our community in that.
Our office did get a call from the Johnny Cake Center, I believe. Mr. Smith is dealing.
Okay.
I've been in touch with them. I don't know what has transpired since then.
Okay. It's not for you to solve. You're just kind of stuck at the podium. But I feel it's a long time, and I don't know. It doesn't sound like there's any good real solution other than a very expensive solution, which would be to redo the road and
Correct.
reprioritize
Correct.
budget in that way.
Yep.
So, John, if the capital improvement is voted on and approved, in the timeline that we usually do, this wouldn't take effect until May, essentially, before it could even begin implementation?
Correct. So the capital budget that we would develop now, if it's the council's decision, we can fold Dam Street into it. But those funds wouldn't be available till July 1st.
So that appropriate remedy would take 7 months from now?
I would think
in the interim, the water would continue to
reasonable.
cause
That's
damage.
a reasonable time frame. Correct.
Say that again?
I would say that's a reasonable time frame. Correct.
And the damage to the taxpayer's property would just continue until that time?
Again, whether that damage is due to this, if Mr. Smith is claiming that it's from the dry well we put in, we can remove that dry well.
Can I just, Mark, if you would come back to the podium for a moment? Don't apologize.
Somebody who hasn't seen nothing, nobody's talking about, shouldn't speak.
So I just want to clarify. You think definitely that since this
drain has been put in, it has ruined my basement. So in the time that we bought the house until this happened, I'm having no problem. I had one sump pump that was put in there when I got the house. that some pump was doing a fine job, didn't have no water or nothing coming in. All of a sudden they put this in, and I get 3 feet of water in my basement. I'm sorry, Abel, if I go off, but I don't remember seeing this guy from Adam. And he says I talked to him. I ain't talked to him at all. So I don't know where he's coming from. I've never seen him on Dam Street. And I'm there every day. So I'm sorry. Who's going to fix my furnace? Who's going to fix my hot water tank? Who's going to fix my foundation? I don't have the money for that. I'm disabled. It didn't happen. Put your thing in there. Instead of doing it the right way, like we said, grade the road off, just like he said. You heard what he said? Grade the road off at an angle. That's what I said to him over a year ago. And you know what they say? Oh, it's not in the budget. That's what I got. And it wasn't him. It was a guy in a white truck and a guy in a red truck. That's who came by. And the next day they started work on it. And I can even show you the people who came onto my street and did the work. As a matter of fact, I grew up with one of them. And I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want to get him in trouble. But I didn't have no problem in my basement till they put that in there. Thank you, Abel.
Mr. Smith, do you want the town to remove the dry well?
Yes.
Okay.
I want the dry well removed, and I would like it paved so the water doesn't come in my basement. Like I said, they moved the puddle from one place, put it in front of my house. And when they put it in front of my house, they dropped their dry well in there. Instead of just having one big puddle, I got a pond. And it's twice as dangerous in the wintertime. I want it gone. Please. And I like so the water goes away from my house, and I like my things fixed, please. That's all I like. It didn't start till they put that in there, and I've been there over 20 years. Never had a problem till that came along. So you guys got to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Further discussion here at the table. So, I mean, obviously, usually these things end up potentially going into the courts, you know.
Well,
right?
we can. Here's my recommendation. We've heard from both John and Mr. Smith this evening. My recommendation would be that you refer this matter to the manager and her staff. I think it's clear that we want the dry well taken out, and John indicated that we could. I also think it's clear that when you get your capital budget that you'll be dealing with in the next couple of months, that there'll probably be an item in there for the long-term fix. And in the meantime, apparently arrangements have been made to have a plumber go to this gentleman's house. So, again, I would refer this to the administration and let them handle it.
Yes. Any other? Well, I think what we're hearing, I mean, for the regrading of the road, potentially. Oh, okay. For the. Right. Right. I totally understand that. The way expenditures work at the town level is plan things months in advance. This is not something, of course, that we anticipated. So, Terry, you want to?
If I may, I think there are two kind of separate issues here. One is a long-term, one is a short-term, and if it is referred to my office, we will look into whatever we can do to provide services that will assist. We'll work with the Johnny Cake Center, and we'll work within the confines of what town programs we may have that could help to expedite the, the water issue, the hot water. I can't promise that by Thanksgiving, Mr. Smith will have hot water, but we will make every effort to see what we can do over the course of the next 48 hours.
Other?
I want to thank you for bringing this up and bringing it to our attention. I think it's very hard when, advocating for yourself and bringing things up somehow the best way to bring about change, but I know it's hard to come here and,
They don't listen to you anyway. They still go about what they're doing, which is just a waste of taxpayers' dollars. Now you got to go back and do the job all over again. Money wasn't in your budget. So you got to go back and do it because my language.
But by bringing this up though, now it's almost perfect timing because they're going to plan projects for going forward. So while 7 months away to fix the road is a long time away, I think at least you're raising us to say, like, this is a problem that we need to fix quickly rather than kick it down the road. And I just wanted to say thank you for coming here and speaking up and being very honest, because I think when people do that, change can happen. Thank you.
All right. Any final things, or do I hear a motion on this?
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion that we refer 8A to the town manager's office and her staff, and to work with the resident here expeditiously in the short term to deal with his matters, and be in constant communication with him as to the status.
Second.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second. Discussion?
Just Terry, if you could just update us as soon as you know information, as soon as we can know that they have hot water or heat, if it comes prior to the meeting, if anytime sooner, that would be appreciated.
All right. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? All right. That motion carries unanimously. And that brings us to 8F, an email dated November 9th, 2021 from Michael Pignataro concerning property tax exemptions for 100% disabled veterans. That has been received. Is Michael here? All right. What would we like to do with this communication?
Maybe we can refer to the tax assessor to look into the feasibility of it and come back to the council with a report analysis as to it.
Do I hear a second? Any further discussion? Anyone opposed?
That could also require General Assembly approval, because all exemptions all taxes have to be fair and even in market value for everyone across the board. That's how we begin. And what the Assembly has done, it's allowed the municipalities to give exemptions and breaks for certain categories. This is one of them. We need to look into whether or not we would need additional enabling legislation if, in fact, the council wanted to go that route.
All right, is there any further discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. 8H, an email dated November 17th, 2021 from Jim O'Neill requesting data on the school district. It was received. I believe it was answered, but Jim is here if you would come up and talk about it.
Sorry. Anyway, Jim O'Neill, Matunic. Just a quick question about Dam Street. When I was on the council, there used to be a South County Community Action who would repair roofs and furnaces, and I don't know where their budgets are nowadays, but God, they were awfully good for really distressed situations. But as I said, I haven't been involved with budgets for those groups, but they were very good once upon a time.
No longer South County Community Action, it's now
Okay.
or Tri-Community Action. They've expanded on, but Terry and her team will explore all avenues for remedy for Mr. Smith.
We had doubled the amount of money that we were giving to Neighbors Helping Neighbors or something, that they were doing some home repairs. Is there any sort of social service organization that we can explore? That'd be good. Thank you.
I can only tell you in the real estate business, one action of one neighbor invariably leads to some problem next door down the street. And that's why we have our building officials, everybody else, to make sure everything's done correctly. But anyway, Jim O'Neill, Matunic, one more time here. I had asked the manager to get some information from the school department for me, and they came through with most of the answers I was looking for, and a few pages of what should be very interesting to all of us. Anyway, the real question I had, of course, was the school population for this year. I don't know if you have these pages, but it came through about 2,587 kids. But my real question is the last line, the 224 kids, because under purchased services in our budget, we have, I think, close to 90 or 100 kids going to Narragansett High School and Charahoe. And I don't know the number for Compass and Kingston Hill. I think they're about 100, so that leaves 124. But I was hoping to see those numbers because I really wanted to know if Narragansett and Charahoe were picking up more of our students from the high school or just where that stood. So hopefully I'll send another message to the manager, and she might find that out. But I think that's very important because we need to know if somebody has some other programs that maybe we could think about doing here in South Kingstown. But that's an important number, which leads into another page here. If I'm looking at this right, the district where the student is coming from in South Kingstown is at $18,377. Am I looking at the right number that this is what we're paying for Charahoe and to Narragansett? Can that be answered? Or is there some index on top of this number I can't find? There's a reason that is going to be of some concern come December. Everybody thinks we're in the $24,000, $25,000 a student range. So, I mean, if you read up top to the left there, it says district where the student is coming from. You have a poverty level student price in South Kingstown. You see about $600 more. But are those the numbers that we send to both Charahoe, Narragansett, and anyone else on here? The following page will tell us what we send to the charter schools, but can anyone, okay, I guess I'll pursue that one.
Certainly double check on that, but I'm showing the local share per pupil according to this data at $16,917. The $18,377 includes state and local.
Okay, but you're on the charter schools page.
Yes, I'm on the CTE tuition. You're looking at the...
$16,917 is our charter school, I believe, our payment.
That's correct. But
it's the other page that I'm trying to figure out what we pay Narragansett and Charahoe. Is it this $18,377 number? And if that's the case, how did they come up with that number at RIDE? Because I've really tried to talk to folks at RIDE, and everyone has a different...
I can't answer that. I will have to confirm.
Okay, all right. That would be appreciative.
So, Mr. O'Neill?
Yep.
I just wanted to see if I understand you correctly. Is your question, how much are we transferring per pupil to Narragansett, per pupil to Charahoe, fewer people to North Kingstown?
It looks like that 18,000 number is the number.
Yep.
What I'm trying to find out is, have there been an increase year to year? Fiscal year 22 we're on now, has there been an increase in the students that we're losing to Narragansett High School and Charahoe, and what kind of programs do they have that we don't have? That by law would be allowed that we could start up and not compete with a Charahoe. There was some Supreme Court ruling on that years ago where we couldn't compete in certain program areas. So that were just a couple of questions along those lines, if we can think about it for a minute. In this current year, we level funded the school budget. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I know that was a hard thing to do, but there's some questions that I have in regards to that. And I don't know what the state law is, and maybe Michael will have to come up with it. And I've got the page here. But for fiscal year 22, we also are taking out $1,040,000 from our undesignated balance to put into that account. This was already taxpayer-earned money. I should say money that was the undesignated balance is supposed to be an account for unspent revenues. So yet we level funded it, but here we have capital pay-as-you-go fund, $537,000, and fund balance, $493,000. So that's another $1 million plus. Nobody that I talk to out in that world knows that, yes, we level funded it, but we gave them another $1 million out of what was already approved in previous years. No one can quite get a handle on all of this. So I'm just telling you where the questions are going to come from. And to refer back, just to give you an idea, some of you might remember in, I think it was fiscal year 2020, you remember the issue of 1.75%, and would we violate the state levy cap of 4%, and we had to keep it right at a number, and there were some other interested parties. So the question is, added to that, we put in another $475,000 from the undesignated fund balance. Does that put us over the state cap? No one's ever talked about it. Even in my term up there, no one ever thought about this because we always tried to stay far enough away from the 4% cap. But that $475,000 put us well above the 4% cap in that particular fiscal year. But the question is, are we allowed, how do we handle undesignated fund balance being added to the property tax appropriation?
So the 4% cap applies to the levy in that particular year. So other towns other than South Kingstown use their undesignated fund balance in similar ways. That would not violate going over.
It would not violate. Well, okay, because it's never discussed with the taxpayers. Oh, here's a property tax, and we're adding another $450,000.
Well, except that during the budget hearings, obviously, I mean, people have to pay attention during budget hearings to see what the council's proposed budget is, and if, in fact, part of that proposed budget is using the undesignated fund balance. That's where that notice would be.
Okay, because there are always millions of dollars coming forward in that account, and I don't know if it's a fiscal year, calendar year situation, but I've never heard of a legal. I don't know, Mike, if there's something legally that you could produce that says this does not have to be included towards the 4% levy cap. Is there something?
You know, I'm more than happy to discuss with Zach.
Okay, fine. All right. No, I would certainly appreciate that. And almost done here, Rabel. Hold on one second. Just something here that what I've tried to do here, in case I get quizzed, was I've gotten all the editions of the local newspapers and whatever information I can get from school committee meetings. So what I've done is catalog what everyone has said. Then over here, what all the numbers are. What a world apart they all are. Now, maybe folks say different things to reporters, But there's really a huge chasm there in between what is said is done. Just a couple examples, and I'll leave you alone for the evening here. Fiscal 20 to fiscal 21, school wages, I won't bore you with the numbers, but they were up 4.25%. Benefits were up 4.30%. Total school budget was up 4.29%. This is before anything else outside of wages, benefits, before the municipal government, anything else. How do wages increase by $1,350,000 in that year when we have about a 2.25% number, and the FTEs did not increase at all according to all the newspapers? We have 460 FTEs. How is this possible? Small things like that, but the problem is when you look at the accounting, they're only as good as the numbers that are really given to them. This isn't quite forensic accounting because you don't want to get to that point. So that was just one particular issue. And little things like that I think are incredibly important. And one last thing, in that fiscal 20-year budget, school budget, Mrs. Stringfellow had us, when we gave them 1.75%, which was $945,000. With that, Mrs. Stringfellow, in writing and in her report, had a still deficit at $3.5 million. And if you read the newspapers after that, Dr. Hicks came in. He saved about 10 fractional positions to bring it down from 40 to 30 FTEs that we had to lose. Saved $500,000. That's $3 million. That the differential, according to the accountants, was $1.8 million. Nothing. It's just you cannot make sense of the numbers. I've certainly tried, but I just want to be fair to the taxpayers that there's a lot more transparency that we need to do here, and hopefully the council will allow this to happen when we meet in December and later dates. And I'll be in touch with Terry if I've forgotten one or two things to mention to you here. Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Finding my way back to the agenda. All right. Do I hear a motion on 8H?
I make a motion to place item 8H on file.
I'll second.
So moved. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? All right. That motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item 9, comments from interested citizens. And first come, first serve, of course. State your name for the record, please.
Dave Cote, Wakefield. I sent an email to summarize this. Jim, I really appreciate it. It's all about the data. You get the data accurate, you can make decisions. The town manager, Terry, provided some details regarding the Matunic EMS, and I had asked for response time. Got an excellent report. Thank you very much. So what is being planned to improve our response time is the Matunic EMS. I'm going to a planning board meeting, so I'm going to restate this tomorrow, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. So it says for the past year, the goal was to be less 8 minutes and 59 seconds. Right here it says the average response time is 7 minutes and 45 seconds. So on average, that's an average.
May I just correct that?
Sure.
That was only for 66% of the time. The EMS response time was that time, 7 minutes and 45 seconds or whatever it was in the report. That was 66% of the time. The other 34% of the time, EMS exceeded that. I can.
Okay, so, okay, that's good. Okay, that's what that says, and that helps me for tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you. So what it shows in this graph, between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. is where the threshold was exceeded. So during that time frame, 2 a.m. there were 37 for the entire year. There were 37 calls. 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 46 calls. 4 a.m., 36 calls. 5 a.m., 54 calls. So based on the graph, it says that's where it exceeded. However, during the 11 to 2 frame where it wasn't exceeded, it looks like it was down in the 6 minute. We have like 150, 160 calls. So how can we, between the 2 and the 5 a.m., with 36, 40 calls, I'd say 50 call on average, exceed the threshold where between the 11 and 2, when there's 150 calls, 3 times the amount, we have better response. We meet the response time. That's what the graph says. So I'm looking at it as something fundamentally going on, and it's early in the morning, between 2 and 5 a.m. with a third less calls where we do not meet the response time. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is the data is saying we're trying to put a EMS in Matunic, but there seems to be a fundamental problem. Also, I looked at the total number of calls for last year. It was 2,500. If you take 2 ambulances divided by 2, in the report, and this is why the data is important, it was stated that there's between 10 and 18 calls per day. But based on the numbers, the data that was given, and averages are averages. So it works out to 3.48 calls per day per ambulance. That's it. So there's peak. I'm sure there's peaks. But where are those peaks? And where it seems to me that there are other fundamental things going on that needs to be resolved versus building a new building. And I had talked about it. If we got to look at, that's why the response time data, and I'm looking forward to if you could get that before the meeting and any more data. But that's what the root of what I'm saying is, let's look at the data, and is building Matunic EMS or adding an ambulance, and we're only at 3.48 calls per ambulance per day on average. Doesn't seem like a lot. So we want to be less than the 8 minutes and 59 seconds, and that's that's best practices for urban areas. And what I was looking at is we're in a rural area. Pawtucket, Providence, Cranston, Warwick are urban. But I don't know why we're calling South Kingstown urban. Evidently it's related to a Medicaid definition, but how does a Medicaid, it seems like we're talking apples and oranges. So I looked at a report, and I included a link, and it shows that all of Washington County is rural. But we can look at that. So just wanted to bring that up to your attention. I think there are fundamental things going on that we can improve EMS response time, and that's the goal. Thank you.
You do. Any other?
Jim O'Neill, Matunic. Just to follow up with the conversation on EMS, is there a point when you look from Jerry Brown Farm Road, all the way to the Green Hill-Charlestown line, south of Route 1, do we have a category of the number of homes that could be occupied? And forgetting the numbers in there for the moment, but is there a point that is central in terms of putting together all the other data that you have been fed? Has someone done, has the fire, someone in the fire department, that area, or I'm sure Carol and planning could do the data, just how many homes there? We can figure out how many are rentals where the volume of people may be larger, then add that to an equation. But it'd be nice to know where, maybe along Route 1, that epicenter might be located. A thought, because north of Route 1, we have very little density. It's really from Jerry Brown Farm Road over to the Charlestown line. Love to see some data. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
So I think, Mr. O'Neill, that Craig Stanley had talked a little bit about COVID changing thing, people moving here, moving to their summer home as a permanent thing. I think that he was noting some changes. He's not here to speak to that, but I think he had mentioned that at a previous meeting, that things had shifted real estate-wise. People were moving here and occupying their homes year-round. So that could be one thing. The other thing I wanted to note is more of a research question. So when you talk about averages, you always should report the standard deviation, because that shows how the scores are spread around the mean, and it allows you to describe if there are outliers. I don't know if anyone's following like a research class, but that if the mean is 14 minutes, you don't know if there's 5 scores that are 25 minutes, and that's what's pushing you to 14. So that's what the descriptor of a standard deviation does. Not that you all need a math lesson, but it would be helpful to when you're showing data, because really the mean doesn't really tell you a lot. It just shows you what the average of the scores is, but it doesn't account for the outlier. And that's what I think would be helpful to show the range of scores, or there's 5 scores that are blowing up the average to the high end.
We can show that. There will be a presentation to the planning board tomorrow night with this data, with additional data included, so it may answer some of Mr. Cote's questions as well as Mr. O'Neill's questions. There is quite a bit of information within this presentation that Chief Stanley has prepared, and I will be presenting tomorrow night at the planning board. So hopefully that'll answer some questions in that regard.
That's just a really good statistical descriptor that adds to the description of the mean, just point of reference.
Hold off until we get other folks to...
Roberta Mulholland, Matunic Schoolhouse Road. It's a shame Chief Stanley isn't here. He's the expert. We have an expert on our staff in our town who has done this work. His expertise is in saving lives. And yet, we have people come up and do their own interpretation of the data without really understanding it. This isn't landscaping. This isn't telephone usage. This is lives. Your highest obligation to the people in this town is the protection of lives. Safety, welfare, lives are up here. It's like your highest duty. It's what we all should think about. Instead, we are presented with self-interest over public interest. This started out as people who just didn't want it in their backyard, side yard, or across the street. Not enough space, too much pavement, ignoring the fact that the site has been engineered to deal with runoff, ignoring the fact that one side of the property has no neighbors. It's fields and fields forever. Ignoring the fact that someone moved to it. In fact, numerous people moved to the fire station. It's an emergency facility. They moved there. Ignoring the fact that with 2 ambulances, the man who testified at the planning board who waited 40 minutes having a heart attack. Do you know where that ambulance came from? Wasn't one of our two. It came from Exeter. Think about that. You live in Green Hill, you're dying from a heart attack. It came from Exeter. The most important thing we should be thinking about is lives. The lives of people in Matunic, Green Hill, Perryville, those lives matter. Chief Stanley said the next one that he wants to plan for is in West Kingston. You haven't done anything, and it's not all of you. It's years and years. This part of town has not been addressed as far as saving their lives. It's time. Now is time. You have a place. The idea that you're going to find an ideal spot when this is already ready, that we could have this in 18 months, that an entire section of town could be served. Additionally, it's going to serve the rest of the town. Why are we sticking to, well, we've got two. We've got two ambulances. You know, we have the volunteers in Charlestown. They're great. They've come out when my family needed them. I don't understand it, and I really think we need to put the lives of everyone in this town at the same plane. Lives are here. Inconvenience of it's next door are down here. The safety of Matunic Schoolhouse Road, it's like every other road in town. This is not unique. And the most dangerous thing I've seen on Matunic Schoolhouse Road is landscapers parking in front of the house next to the fire station, taking up the entire laneway. So that if you're going up the hill, going west, they're parked in the laneway. Big parking lot in that house, parked in the laneway. Houses and trailers. Everybody has to go around going directly into traffic. That's not someone who cares about the safety of the people driving Matunic Schoolhouse Road. I really hope you put public interest over self-interest here. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, just before you start, is there anybody else who would like to speak tonight?
Dave Cote, Wakefield. Those previous comments were subjective and completely unfair and unjust. What we're talking about here, and Chief Stanley, what she was right about, Chief Stanley, his job is to save lives. What we're talking about is engineering, so maybe we need another person. If you don't design the foundation, the house is going to fall down. What Councilwoman Bergner was saying is the statistics. What we're trying to figure out is what's the best solution. Is it to add an ambulance right away? Why wait for Matunic? Is it to add a third ambulance, a fourth ambulance in the existing infrastructure? Is that the best way? I looked at a map north of Route 1. The response time was very high north of Route 1 by the Charlestown border. There was one location that had 6 calls. We're talking for the entire year, 53 calls that occurred in the outlying areas of South Kingstown. If we can get, for the meeting tomorrow, get a map of where all those calls occurred and why it took so long to get there. We are concerned about the citizens and reduce response time. You have to engineer it properly. Let the people who are responsible for taking care of the people take care of it, but we need to design the foundation right, or the house is going to fall down, and it's not going to work. That's all we're talking about. We are concerned with improved EMS response time. You have to do it right, and you have to look at the data. And there is no the self-interest is reducing EMS response time for South Kingstown.
Sir? All right. Terry?
I would just like to clarify one other item in the data of the memorandum that the council received. The 53 calls that are listed within that memo, those are critical care calls. Those are not the entirety of the calls to the southern area of town. So that's also a piece. And if it wasn't clear, just so you, sure. So those calls that are listed in this memo just reflect critical care calls that were responded to with an average response time of 14.6 minutes. So we'll clarify the total number of calls to that area.
All right, thank you, Terry. All right, any comments from council members this evening? No, just anything.
I can either do it at the town manager's report or at the town solicitor's report. I just have a couple of questions.
Yeah, probably better town manager's report. General comments, interested citizens type stuff. All right. Well, I'll just say it was really nice to get out for Veterans Day. It's been a couple weeks, but great to see everybody out there. We had a great day for it, and it was the first parade we've had in a while. So, it was wonderful. We didn't get to celebrate Richard Parker's 100th birthday there, but he did have a birthday party a couple days later, and we have a resolution coming up for him, so I want to wish him a happy birthday, wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, of course. And yeah, so those were my general thoughts here. I did want to say the interviews this evening reminded me about that South County bike trail idea that had been brought up from time to time over the years. And that reminded me that that's the type of topic that the Washington County Regional Planning Council used to sort of tackle, and that organization has just not met in a number of years, couple of years. But I know that the executive director of that organization, he reached out to me. He'd be interested in getting it reformed. It takes a council member from each town in Washington County, if everybody's interested, if all the other towns are interested. So I am interested in finding out if our council's interested in reinvigorating that regional planning council, because I can get back in touch with Jeff Broadhead.
Broadhead's
Yeah.
group, it always was pretty...
And if we're going to talk about it, I just want to have it as an agenda item.
I don't need to talk about it. I just want to know
If we do want to talk about it, just...
No, that's something.
Okay. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say to all of you, Deb Kelso and I both were at the opening of the Housing Authority's new laundry. We got to see the facility. I was there. It's really quite nice. I think it's a project that's been a long overdue project for the residents, and there were some tears and good work being done by the Housing Authority. And I just want, if you haven't seen, it's super nice, like really nice stainless front loaders for the residents, and it's just really great to see one project at least come forward. So it's to see.
That's great. And any other comments from council members? All right, that brings us to the town manager's report.
Yes, a couple of items that I would bring the council's attention to. One is that for your upcoming meetings, there is only one regular session scheduled for the month of December, and that's December 13th. There's also a meeting on December 20th, which is the initial budget hearing with the school committee, and those are the two meetings in December that I wanted to just remind you of, bring your attention to. I also pointed out that there was a follow-up memorandum with regard to the Dam Street item in your packets, if you haven't had a chance to look at that. And unless there are questions, that's the manager's report.
this isn't a question that's on the manager's report, but I just wanted to go back to the old Tower Hill Road conversation we had a few months ago. I know that Will Green, who's the landscape architecture professor at URI, his class a number of years ago looked at Old Tower Hill Road and trying to rezone it. I know we spent time and resources with that class project, and then we had the memo from the EDC about, and the planning board about bringing that back and bringing that forward to rezone Old Tower Hill Road. I just feel like we talk a lot about increasing the housing stock, adding to affordable housing, and I feel like we've put some tools in the toolbox, whether we did cottage zoning, we did the accessory dwelling unit change, but I just want to understand how we can move it forward more quickly. We were told it's 6 to 9 months before the planning board can get to it, which it could be true. They may have a lot of projects, but I just want to know what we need to do. If there's things we need to do now to be ready to do that. I personally wouldn't want to wait until June. I feel like we're always losing ground on creating housing for people, either rentals or things like that. So I don't know what needs to be in place to help that move forward, but I want to put it out there again that maybe we can, I don't know, talk to the EDC again. I know there's a work session with them. I know the planning board is interested, or some are interested in taking up that on Old Tower Hill Road. I just don't know what we need to do, either behind the scenes or here at the table, to make it move forward more quickly.
I can certainly tap into the planning department again, look at what is on the horizon for planning board priorities, and see where this falls. The last that I had checked in on planning, it was the 6 to 9 month kind of outlook, but we can certainly have that discussion again and see what the priorities are, and I can get back to the council with a more detailed report of what is going on with planning in terms of prioritization, and whether or not the council wants to look at reprioritizing if that's necessary.
I just feel like there's not a lot of opportunity to build housing that would be walkable and usable by people who live in the center of town, and I feel like that's been identified as an area, yet it's 6 to 9 months away from starting. So changing the zoning, it's not like they're going to do it in a meeting. So it's just another, I think we need to be constantly trying to improve the tools that we have so that we have more housing opportunities for all people. So I don't know how other people feel, if they feel it's a need that we need to try to move forward. We're never going to get to it in December, but 6 to 9 months puts us in June before we even start. So you're really talking, you're kicking it a whole year away before it changes. And we know how desperate housing rentals and housing is for people. And I feel like all of you care about that. That's why I wanted to bring it back up.
Right. So yeah, I mean, if we want to put it back on the front burner, we could, put together a work session again.
I just feel like if we don't talk about it, it'll be June, and then we'll be saying the same thing. We care about affordable housing. It's important to live in this town, but yeah, we're not trying to advance it. We don't agree on all things, but I think the 5 of us agree on the need that we don't have the right housing stock for our community.
Agreed. Well, I think let's have Terry sort of talk to planning, come back with a report, and see what our next steps are, and how close the Horsley-Witten report really is to getting in front of us. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Any other questions for town manager?
Terry, can you just touch on the conversation we had in the work session relative to the Saugatuck River and the grants that are being sought by the Planning Board and the Economic Development Committee in concert there?
Sure. To recap some of the items related to Saugatucket Park, the Economic Development Committee, the Recreation Commission have been involved with looking at a broader improvement program for the park and the banks of the Saugatucket River. In that regard, the Recreation Department has already received an $80,000 grant to go towards improvements that are in the capital plan, have been in the capital plan for 2 years. In addition to that, kind of expanding it out to include some of the recommendations from the Economic Development Committee involved looking at the original design of the park and how to incorporate or maintain as much of the original design as possible. Also includes a technical grant through SNEP, and I apologize, for the life of me, I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's basically technical assistance in the form of landscape architecture, stormwater management, from experts in the field. They will train a group of staff and volunteers and work together to develop specific stormwater management tools and buffer restoration tools that will help to basically maintain the water quality of the river and the stormwater management around the river. And staff and the technical experts will try to identify and come up with these solutions that, whether they are immediately incorporated into the plan or further down the road, basically South Kingstown then becomes a model for other communities to look at how we've managed certain areas, sensitive areas environmentally that basically contribute also to our economic development with Main Street right there. And that's going on now. The trainings are going on. They'll go into, I think they go through March. And then there'll be basically a plan for those specific projects related to stormwater management and buffer restoration that would dovetail with the improvement project, either of the park or the river, some portion of the river.
Thank you.
Terry, so I was approached by the chair of the EDC committee asking me if I could request a joint work session just on the Saugatucket park improvement plan with the council, the EDC, the planning board, and the Recreation Commission. So I'll put forth that request now and see if you can come up with something sooner rather than later. They were looking for January, hopefully.
I'm sorry, did you say January?
Looking for a meeting in January.
Oh, okay.
They wanted to get in before the budget discussion started, so I think that's the intent on their end.
Okay.
I just wanted to echo that. I think that when they presented a few months ago, it feels like it was a lifetime ago, but there was such good energy and enthusiasm for the project and how multiple boards could collaborate in a good way for our community and probably heal some of the divisive communities that continue. But I feel like we need that, I think, as a community, and I think the energy from the collaboration was palpable that night. So I'd like to echo that support for that sooner rather than later.
Any other questions for the town manager? Okay, town solicitor's report.
One of the items that you discussed with your manager search consultant, Bob Mercia, was obtaining input from other community leaders. And we were throwing out names of, whether it be someone from South County Hospital, Chamber, the chairman of the planning board. There were a number of things that were thrown out. So what they would like is they would like a list from the council of who you would recommend they'd reach out to. They thought maybe about a dozen, somewhere in that area. And they can do this one of two ways. If if you get the list to them, and I'm going to suggest how we do this in a second, but if you get the list to them, they can either reach out to each one individually and have a phone conversation or a Zoom meeting with them, or they will come down here for a day and speak to people, on a given day and do it that way. The downside to the day would be not everyone might not be able to make it during the day based on their jobs, etc. And also, they thought it would be helpful if they had this input prior to the January 3rd ending date. So reaching out to them directly will be the most efficient. However, having said that, they're very willing to come here and spend the day. So my thought is as follows. If each of you sent to Colleen a list of individuals, entities you'd think it would make sense for them to reach out to, she can then compile that list and get it to them with the contact information. But you all need to decide here tonight whether you want them to plan a day in December to come here. Now, that's different from the listening session with the community, right? So they're also going to come back here after January 3rd, sometime in January, after they have all the applicants in front of them, for some type of community outreach where the community would be invited to tell them, here's what we'd like to see in a manager. Because by then they'll have all the applicants and they'll be able to use that. So that would be different from what we're talking about, obviously, right now. So any preference on reach out individually or have them come here and try to do a day of communicating that way?
I think the individual outreach is going to be better, personally.
I agree. I think that's more efficient.
Agreed as well.
Yep. All right. So if you could all get your list to Colleen by sometime next week. I mean, if you want to say by December 1, that would be great. I mean, nothing's going to happen between now and Thanksgiving anyhow. But if you could get the list to Colleen by December 1, she'll then be able to get it to them, and they can be doing this during the month of December. The other thing Bob mentioned to me is that they will also be providing to you their proposed essay questions that will be asked to each of the applicants that make it through their list so that you can have input on that. The final thing is that you have before you this evening the little brochure about the town, and there's been some comments already on this. Just wondering if this is something that you want to discuss here this evening, how you want to handle, if you think there's something missing or something should be emphasized more, or if you think it's a good document at this point.
Are we going to discuss this now, or are we going to, do we have an agenda item on this?
I'm sorry, it is coming up in new business E, so if you want, you can discuss it now, or you can wait to new business item E.
I have some edits, let me put it that way. Mostly grammatical things that jump out at me.
Right, and so those things, obviously, you can just get to Colleen.
And then I have a couple of other maybe rewording of some sentences that I think would maybe enhance
So able,
a little bit, but nothing, I have nothing major.
I guess my question is, do you want to wait to get to new business item E, or do you want to handle it now?
Let's wait until we get to the new business item.
All right, so unless you have any questions, I'm going to suggest to them that they reach out to the list that you all provide to Colleen. Also, they want you to know that they're going to be at your first meeting in December, which is the 10th, January 10th. They will be here at that meeting to provide you with an update and let you know where they're at.
All right. December.
Did I say December? I meant January.
You meant January.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
January 10th. In January.
All right. Any questions for the solicitor?
On
this topic or another topic?
Any topic?
So I had a chance to read your memo on the open meetings, not violations of Open Meetings Act, and I just had a couple of questions. It's not linked on the agenda, so residents might not be easily able to find it. This might be another one that might be helpful to link to the agenda because it's on the town manager.
It's on the manager's report, exactly.
So residents might not be able to find that, but I was just curious how to report an open meetings violation. Could you explain that to the public?
So normally, when someone believes there's been a violation of the Open Meetings Act, that they would write a letter to the Attorney General, Peter Nerona. He then takes it and gives it to a staff person who's dedicated to dealing with OMA and Access to Public Records Act complaints. But it's literally a letter to the Attorney General's office.
Okay. And how long do people have to file these complaints?
Within 180 days of their belief that an Open Meetings Act violation occurred.
Okay.
After 180 days, there's no longer any jurisdiction.
Okay. So they have 180 days?
180 days from the time that the violation allegedly occurred. Right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, Mike? All right, that brings us to appointments.
Rory McEntee will make a resolution appointing David Hamill and James Vogel to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
I'll second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. We have not seen Peter Maynard for the Route 138 Reconstruction Project Area Committee. We could still appoint him if we so desired. I don't know if anybody has any opinion on that. Or we can wait for him to show up. And then we did get a late entry for the 300th Anniversary Celebration Steering Committee.
I would like to appoint Kim Rose to the 300th town 300th anniversary, right? Kim Rose? Yes.
I'm
Mary,
sorry.
you had something.
I just want to point out we had another late application, Beth LeConte, and if the council is amenable, if you would add Ms. LeConte as well.
Amenable, so I'll add Beth LeConte to the 300th anniversary.
Thank you.
Steering committee.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously as well. That brings us to new business. Are there any other appointments? All right, 13A, a resolution affirming a citation congratulating World War II Army veteran Richard Parker, who celebrated his 100th birthday on November 16th, 2021, as follows. The Town Council of the Town of South Kingstown hereby offers its congratulations to Richard Parker in recognition and celebration of his 100th birthday on November 16th, 2021. The entire Town Council extends its best wishes and congratulations on reaching this milestone. We are honored to join your family and fellow veterans in the VFW Post 916 and thanking you for your service in the United States Army during World War II as part of the greatest generation.
Rory McEntee, motion to approve 13A.
Second.
So moved. Any further discussion?
Sure. He's a pretty amazing guy. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to meet him. I've only heard interesting tidbits about him. He's written multiple books. He's 100, and he has written a book in the last year that he's published. He's also a RISD grad. He was a longtime docent at RISD Museum. He's pretty interesting as well as being a veteran, so he's a pretty storied resident, so I want to just acknowledge his birthday. I know they tried to get him 100 birthday cards, and I know they had a big ceremony at Brightview, so pretty awesome. May we all live that long and so full.
Yes, I was fortunate enough to be able to go over to the celebration there and see some of his artwork. Really pretty amazing stuff. So much more than just turning 100. Certainly we could have gone on with that resolution. All right, any other comments? All right, anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. 13B is a resolution affirming or amending the town's liquor license rules and regulations. Section 1, the current number of licenses for each class shall be authorized as indicated below unless changed by majority vote of the town council. This is coming before us because one of the victualler licenses in town is no longer in use, so we could reduce that number if we so choose.
I'll make a motion to reduce the Class B limited license number from 5 to 4.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Item D, a resolution authorizing the town clerk to advertise for order of notice a public hearing relative to proposed amendments to the town code, Chapter 3, Animals and Fowl, Article 1, in general, relative to animals that leave the premises of their owners, shown on Exhibit 1.
Rory McEntee, I'll make a motion to approve 13D.
I'll second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. 13E, a resolution approving the profile and challenge document, sorry, getting late, prepared by Municipal Resources, Inc. for the town manager search. So we were just talking about this briefly. Deb, you have some edits, but you agree in general with the...
Yeah, I just have a question. So I think in their communication to us, their meaning MRI's communication to us, they said something about getting the edits to them by the 29th, right? I think that's what I recall from their communication. So are you looking for, Mike, a final version of this tonight from us to send to them by the 29th? Is that what we're trying to accomplish here?
I think that would make a lot of sense. But as I said earlier, anything that's grammatical or typographical, we can obviously handle that.
So when I went into the program, into the Word document, and when I went to save it, it asked me if I wanted to share that, which I did not do because I was concerned about who I was, like, is this an open meetings violation, right, if I share this with everybody? So I didn't do that. So tell me the best way to proceed.
In the future, any one of you has the ability and the right to share with your fellow councilors anything you want to share. I always recommend that you send it through the manager's office and then let the manager share instead of you sharing. The violation would only come into effect is if more than 2 of you started responding, saying, well, I like this, I dislike this. Now you're having a conversation about town business. But you, in this case, you could have simply sent it to Terry and asked her to please share with the council.
That's not the option here. This is a shared document, so I don't know who's in the shared pool.
Okay.
Right?
But in general.
Right, okay. So if I send my edits, which are largely grammatical, except for a couple of sentences, to the manager's office.
Right.
Right? That's
okay.
Okay.
And then the manager's
Tonight,
office.
if we're looking for a final version, that won't be included, those grammatical changes.
So what we could do is once you send them, and obviously everyone's going to have some input tonight, but once you send them to the manager's office, it can then be shared with the rest of the council with a question. Do you have any objections to these changes? Each individual council can individually respond to the manager's office, as long as they don't respond all.
So I think it might be helpful, though, to talk about the non-grammatical changes that you might want to make here, or all of us, of course.
My only observation from a highest level is that it doesn't discuss or doesn't reveal or share that we have a significant land area that's under under open space, and that sort of is the, and a unique quality that 30% of our land area is designated as open space, and that sort of push and pulls with development and sort of constricts and guides development here. And so while it talks about affordable housing, I mean, those two things are in the same scale, I'd say. Not scale, but the push and pull of each, because every time you protect open space, there's just a little bit less land that could ever be developed, which doesn't meet the housing needs that we have. So I don't know how you include that. It just was like a theme that didn't come through.
Yeah, maybe where it mentions the 4 wildlife refuges, we can talk more detail there about how much land is under, whatever type of federal or state and local protection. One small thing that leapt out at me is where we talk about Rhode Island's having the longest name in the country, and that is no longer the case. So, as long as we take that
one's been addressed.
But overall, I found it pretty good. Makes me want to apply for the job. So,
if I could just get back to Councilor Bergner's suggestion, what you'd like to see is a sentence or so added that points out that approximately one third of the town's land mass is open space, and which as a result gives less opportunity for future growth. Or on a positive way of saying that is that future growth needs to be infill. Right, it's infill where the future growth is going to come from. Is that what you had in mind?
Yeah, we have land use and growth, economic development and growth, and then a couple down is affordable and low moderate and income housing. I just feel like it doesn't capture the aspect that 30% of the land in town is protected, and it is a challenge because there was a property that was for sale out on Ministerial, and it could have been used for housing, but it was protected by the land trust. Is it a good thing? Absolutely, it's a good thing. But then you're just reducing the number of opportunities to build housing, and where can you build housing that's affordable? I mean, at some point, those things are in competition with each other, not in competition, but they're competing needs. In my mind, the more you protect, the less there is to build on, which is fine, but there are consequences to that too.
Yeah, so I think they talk about sort of the comp plan, development, and
land use
and land use, and the idea of smart growth. Like Mike was saying, I think if we want to go into more details there, I just don't know that it changes, the pamphlet too much. But I think everybody knows that there's who's familiar with planning in, a suburban environment, which borders on a lot of rural land as well, knows that there's going to be this tension between development and protection, and that's definitely something that we should.
That sounds like a great essay question. A topic for an essay question.
It sounds like a great question.
Do you want to suggest a sentence or two that we could add in while we're making the other changes? I'm not even talking about right now, this minute. I'm just
I mean, I would include it because we typically say, we're typically proud of the fact that we have protected a considerable amount of land, and it's going to keep our community looking the way a lot of people want it to look. Rural, farm, forest. I think it's a community value. Just putting something to recognize that. But it's fine.
Oh, I do tend to agree here. It does pose a significant challenge, right? And we're talking about challenges here. But yeah, what you just said it is something that we're proud of. That makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that if we're looking to attract somebody that shares that value, that should be something that we highlight. And if this is what we're using to highlight, it should probably be in there.
So just to clarify, what we're talking about is adding sentences relative to the fact that there's competing interests, which is providing stronger challenges?
No, just the fact that you have to balance the need between open space and affordable housing, that we have this much protected. 98% of the town's residential, 2% is not residential. So, like just a better snapshot.
All right, more precise information.
Yeah, because our value for the last 20 years has been protecting the land, like picking it up wherever we could. The land trust has amassed a lot of land. We've participated in that. That's all.
Okay. I'm all right with that. More precise information relative to that.
And we can certainly add something, and it will go out to all of you.
Anything else people feel is missing or that needs to be removed?
My changes are not substantive. They are largely grammatical, and I'll leave it at that. I'll send them offline.
And then you're going to send us the, red line version. And we can.
Colleen will send a red line draft out.
All right. Do you need, what type of motion are you looking for then on this item?
I think for purposes of this evening, a motion to approve the document as amended this evening, that'll be fine.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. That does bring us to the end of tonight's public agenda. We are going to move into closed executive session. So I'm going to ask all you fine folks to... No, yeah, we did. Yeah. So, yeah, you voted for it.
It went quickly.
Yeah, there was no discussion. Thank you all for coming tonight. We'll see you at a future meeting, I'm sure. Be well. Happy Thanksgiving. Yes. And I need a motion, 14A. Anybody want to make it?
It has to be read out loud under the law, so.
We could flip a coin.
I'll make a motion to move into closed executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42-46-5A2 to discuss and/or act upon matters pertaining to litigation regarding Garrett Homes LLC versus South Kingstown Zoning Board WC-2021-0397 Zoning Appeal KSL-SK Inc. versus Jean Bouchard WC 2020-0139 tax appeal and multi-district opioid litigation and pursuant to Rhode Island General Law 42-46-5 A5, to discuss matters related to the acquisition or lease of real property for public purposes, or of the disposition of publicly held property wherein advanced public information would be detrimental to the interest of the public.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. We can turn our microphones off.